Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Midnight's Children, Salman Rushdie's landmark novel first published in 1981, is a towering work of postcolonial literature that intertwines history, magic realism, and personal memory in an ambitious narrative of India's birth as a nation. The book won the Booker Prize in 1981 and later the Booker of Bookers, solidifying its place as one of the most influential English-language novels of the late 20th century. At its core, Midnight's Children is an allegory for the turbulent birth of India and the struggles of identity that followed. The protagonist, Saleem Sinai, is born at the exact moment of India's independence at midnight on August 15, 1947. His life is mysteriously linked to the fate of the nation itself, weaving the personal and the political into a tapestry that is as complex as the history it reflects. The novel explores themes of national identity, the legacy of colonialism, the chaos of partition, and the magic realism that infuses personal histories with mythic resonance. Rushdie's style is richly layered, combining lyrical prose with sharp satire and deep emotional insight. His use of a fragmented, non-linear narrative mirrors the fractured reality of the postcolonial world, where history is never simple or singular. The novel also sparked controversy for its bold depiction of political events and figures, pushing boundaries around narrative authority and cultural memory. As we delve into this extraordinary story, we will journey through Saleem Sinai's life, from his miraculous birth to his experiences navigating the tumultuous decades of India's early years, all while uncovering the interplay between history and personal destiny. This summary aims to unfold the novel's dense narrative with clarity and depth, making its brilliance accessible and captivating for our viewers. The story begins with Saleem Sinai announcing his own birth, a moment that is anything but ordinary. He arrives into the world precisely at midnight on August 15, 1947, the very moment that India shakes off the chains of British colonial rule and steps into independence. This coincidence immediately frames Saleem as a child intertwined with the fate of the nation itself. His birth in Bombay, amid the fanfare, hope, and uncertainty that accompanies the dawn of a new era, is no mere happenstance, but a portentous sign. Saleem's narrative voice is vivid, personal, and occasionally unreliable, which adds a layer of mystery and complexity to his story. He narrates with an intense immediacy, often addressing the reader directly, inviting us to piece together fragments of his life and the world around him. From the outset, he confesses that his memory is imperfect, sometimes overwhelmed by the past, sometimes colored by myth, and that his tale will be as much about forgetfulness and reconstruction as it is about facts. Born to Ahmed and Amina Sinai, Saleem's early life is steeped in contradictions and cultural crosscurrents. His parents come from distinct backgrounds. His father, Ahmed Sinai, is a staunchly secular, Western-educated man, while his mother, Amina, is deeply traditional. The Sinai family lives comfortably in Bombay, and Saleem's childhood is shaped by the influences of his immediate environment, an India where old and new collide violently and beautifully. As Saleem grows, he becomes aware of his extraordinary connection to the other children born in the first hour of independence. These Midnight's children all possess magical powers, and Saleem's own abilities include telepathy, a mental connection that links him to the rest of the children across the subcontinent. This collective group symbolizes the hopes, dreams, and fractured identities of a newly independent nation trying to define itself amid religious, ethnic, and regional divisions. The narrative shifts fluidly between personal anecdotes and sweeping historical events. Saleem's family history is intertwined with the grander story of India's transition from colony to republic, complete with the chaos of partition, which results in the violent division of the country into India and Pakistan. Saleem's parents are caught in the upheaval, their lives uprooted by political forces beyond their control, much like millions of others. The novel does not shy away from depicting the brutality and human cost of this historic rupture, its refugees, massacres, and enduring trauma. Saleem's own identity begins to unravel as he grows. His father's secular vision clashes with the religious fervor and political turmoil engulfing the country. Saleem is marked by his peculiar, oversized nose, a physical trait that isolates him and symbolizes his burden as someone different and destined to bear witness to India's troubled history. This metaphor extends throughout the novel. Saleem's body becomes a living record of the country's wounds and transformations. In parallel, Saleem's early childhood is a swirl of family tensions, shifting allegiances, and the shaping of his nascent sense of self. His grandfather, a military man, represents the old colonial order fading into history, while his uncle is involved in subversive political activities that hint at the future struggles Saleem will face. The household is a microcosm of India itself, a place where love, violence, and political ideology clash under one roof. As Saleem's narrative unfolds, Rushdie's prose dances between the surreal and the everyday. The story is peppered with moments of magic realism, conversations with ghosts, prophetic dreams, and the telepathic links between the Midnight's children that elevate the novel from mere historical fiction into something mythic. Saleem himself is an unreliable narrator who sometimes admits to exaggerations and self-doubt, forcing readers to question what is real and what is constructed memory. The first part of the novel establishes the foundation for Saleem's journey, a boy born with the fate of a nation tied to his own, caught between historical upheaval and personal discovery. As Saleem grows, the consequences of independence, communal violence, political corruption, and identity crises begin to press in on him. His story is not just his own, but a collective tale of a generation born at the cusp of great change, charged with the impossible task of shaping a fractured country into a new whole. This opening section is as much about establishing Saleem's voice and the novel's tone as it is about setting the stage for what is to come. The complexity of the narrative, its shifts in time, perspective, and style, reflects the tumultuous history it chronicles. Through Saleem's eyes, we begin to glimpse the intertwined fates of individuals and nations, where memory, myth, and history collide to create a story that is as personal as it is epic. As Saleem Sinai's story continues, the tumult of post-independence, India begins to shape not only the world around him, but also his very sense of self. The novel dives deeper into the complex and often painful intersections of personal memory and national history. Saleem's childhood unfolds amidst the echoes of partition, a catastrophe that tore apart families and communities, and its impact lingers heavily over the narrative. Saleem's family life grows more complicated as the years pass. His parents, who had seemed somewhat distant and formal in the early days, become caught up in their own struggles and ambitions. His father, Ahmed Sinai, a man with grand dreams and a knack for business, increasingly drifts away from the secular values he once championed, driven by the economic pressures and political currents sweeping the country. His mother, Amina, remains a figure of warmth and resilience, but also embodies the tensions of a society grappling with tradition and modernity. At the heart of Saleem's story is his awareness of the special nature of the Midnight's children, those born in the first hour after India's independence. Each child has a unique supernatural gift, and Saleem, as the narrator, positions himself as a kind of reluctant leader among them. His ability to communicate telepathically with the others forms a powerful metaphor for the fractured, yet deeply interconnected, nature of the newly born nation. The Midnight's children symbolize the promise and chaos of independence, representing a diversity of religions, languages, and cultures thrown together in one sprawling land. Saleem's telepathic network is a vivid narrative device that Rushdie uses to explore the idea that the fate of a nation is made up of countless individual stories, each carrying its own dreams and scars. Saleem's own sense of identity becomes inseparable from this collective. The children's powers are both a blessing and a curse, reflecting the paradox of independence itself, full of potential, but marked by fragmentation and conflict. The political landscape of India during this period is volatile, and Saleem's family is swept up in these upheavals. The shadow of partition continues to loom large. Though Saleem was born in Bombay, his family's roots spread across the subcontinent, and their experiences reflect the divisions that cleaved apart communities and created lasting wounds. Refugees flood cities, and violence between Hindus and Muslims erupts repeatedly, underscoring the fragile unity of the country. Saleem's narrative reveals how these historical events are not distant abstractions, but lived realities that touch every corner of his life. His parents' decisions, their hopes and fears, mirror the broader challenges India faces in forging a cohesive identity. The story does not shy away from depicting the ugliness of religious fanaticism, political corruption, and the betrayals that characterize this era. Yet, even amid chaos and sorrow, there are moments of tenderness and humor that give the narrative its emotional texture. A particularly striking aspect of the story is the role of memory, both personal and collective. Saleem struggles with his own recollections, aware that memory is unreliable and malleable. He sometimes questions the accuracy of what he remembers and acknowledges how stories are shaped by desire, fear, and the passage of time. This self-awareness adds depth to his narration, reminding the audience that history is always filtered through subjective experience. Saleem's physical body becomes a symbolic canvas on which history leaves its marks. His unusually large and sensitive nose, which he refers to often, is not just a quirky characteristic, but a metaphor for his heightened sensitivity to the world's suffering and his own fragmented identity. His body is described as a living archive, bearing the scars of the nation's struggles. This blending of the physical and political echoes the magical realist style that permeates the novel. The Sinai household itself is a microcosm of the larger Indian society, complex, diverse, and often contradictory. Saleem's extended family includes characters who represent different facets of the country's cultural and political spectrum. His grandfather, a British Army officer, symbolizes the colonial past. His mother and father, caught between tradition and modernity, embody the struggles of a generation caught in transition. Meanwhile, Saleem's own experiences reflect the uncertainties and contradictions of the new India. As Saleem approaches adolescence, the narrative begins to explore the consequences of growing up in a country still wrestling with its fractured identity. His education, friendships, and first encounters with love and loss are all set against the backdrop of a nation still struggling to define itself. The telepathic connection with the other Midnight's children grows stronger, symbolizing the attempt to build a sense of unity and shared purpose amid diversity. One of the novel's powerful themes emerges here: the tension between individual destiny and historical forces. Saleem is both a participant in and a witness to history, caught between his own personal story and the collective fate of the nation. His magical powers symbolize this dual role, highlighting the difficulty of navigating a world shaped by forces beyond his control. Rushdie's storytelling is rich with symbolism and layered meanings. The Midnight's children themselves are a brilliant invention, representing not only the literal children born at midnight, but also the new generation charged with rebuilding the nation. Each child's gift reflects different aspects of India's cultural mosaic. Some have abilities tied to specific regions or religions, emphasizing the country's diversity as well as its divisions. Throughout this section, Saleem's narration continues to weave between intimate family moments and sweeping political events. The personal becomes political, and vice versa. This fusion is a hallmark of the novel, demonstrating how individual lives are inseparable from the larger historical narrative. Saleem's reflections on his own life and the lives of those around him reveal the complexities of identity formation in a post-colonial context. The story also begins to hint at the challenges and betrayals that lie ahead for Saleem and his fellow Midnight's children. Political intrigue, social unrest, and the forces of authoritarianism loom on the horizon. Saleem's journey is not just about discovering who he is, but also about confronting the harsh realities of power and oppression in a country still defining itself. Amidst all this, Saleem's voice remains compellingly human, sometimes vulnerable, sometimes defiant, always deeply reflective. His narration draws the listener into a world that is at once fantastical and painfully real, inviting us to consider how history shapes identity and how personal and national stories are forever intertwined. In sum, this section of the novel builds on the foundation laid in the opening, deepening the exploration of Saleem's identity and the historical forces shaping his life. The magical realism becomes more pronounced, the political context more urgent, and the narrative voice more intimate. Saleem's journey is not just a personal memoir, but a sweeping saga of a nation in flux, full of hope, contradiction, and the enduring struggle for meaning. The story unfolds further as Saleem Sinai moves through adolescence, a period marked by increasing awareness of both his personal peculiarities and the tumultuous world around him. As he grows, so too does the weight of the legacy that the Midnight's children carry, a legacy entwined with the hopes, tragedies, and contradictions of a newly independent India. Saleem's telepathic gift, which connects him to the other children born at the stroke of midnight, becomes more than a fantastical plot device. It emerges as a powerful metaphor for the challenge of forging unity amid diversity. Saleem's adolescence is shaped by the shifting political landscape that forms the backdrop to his coming of age. India, Pakistan, and the newly formed Bangladesh are each struggling to find stability, often amid violence and political unrest. This turbulence penetrates deeply into Saleem's life, blurring the lines between the public and the private, the political and the personal. The Sinai family moves multiple times, each relocation reflecting the instability of the era and the shifting fortunes of its members. Bombay, Delhi, and other cities serve not only as settings, but as living characters themselves, with their own rhythms, contradictions, and histories. At the heart of this section is Saleem's struggle to understand the nature of his powers and his place in the world. His telepathy allows him to convene a secret meeting of the Midnight's children, an extraordinary moment when these disparate voices unite. Yet, this union is fragile and fraught with tension. The children's diverse gifts symbolize India's cultural, religious, and linguistic multiplicity. But these differences also threaten to tear them apart. The meeting highlights the paradox of independence, a country founded on unity, but riddled with internal divisions and conflicts. Saleem's leadership among the Midnight's children is hesitant and burdened by self-doubt. His physical ailments, including his persistent nosebleeds and his growing awareness of his body's vulnerabilities, symbolize his deeper sense of fragility. This fragility is mirrored in the nation itself, still vulnerable to forces that threaten to unravel its hard-won freedom. Saleem's body and his powers reflect the intertwining of personal and political fragility, and his narration conveys a sense of inevitability, as if the weight of history presses down on him and his generation. The novel's narrative style continues to captivate, shifting effortlessly between magical realism, historical detail, and intimate family drama. Saleem's voice remains confessional and conversational, often addressing the reader directly and inviting them to question the nature of truth and memory. His storytelling is layered, with digressions and flashbacks that create a rich tapestry of experience. Through this technique, Rushdie explores how personal identity is shaped by history, memory, and storytelling itself. A significant development during this period is Saleem's education, which further opens his eyes to the contradictions and complexities of the world. His schooling exposes him to ideas and ideologies that challenge his family's values and the society they inhabit. He begins to understand the inequalities and tensions that persist beneath the surface of independence, the caste system, communalism, and political corruption. These realities complicate his youthful idealism and force him to confront the darker side of his nation's story. Saleem's relationship with his family also evolves. His father's business successes and failures become a barometer of the family's fortunes, tied closely to the shifting economic and political climate. Ahmed Sinai's descent into materialism and religious fanaticism contrasts sharply with Saleem's own spiritual and intellectual quests. The tensions within the family mirror the broader social tensions of the time between tradition and modernity, religion and secularism, nationalism and personal ambition. Another critical theme emerging here is the idea of fragmentation, both of identity and of the nation. Saleem's narrative is punctuated by moments of confusion and disorientation, reflecting his struggle to piece together the fractured pieces of his own life and the world around him. The Midnight's children themselves are emblematic of this fragmentation, each representing a different facet of a country divided by religion, language, and politics. Saleem's attempt to unify them through his telepathic powers is an allegory for India's ongoing struggle to create a cohesive national identity. At the same time, Saleem's story is deeply personal and emotional. His experiences with first love, friendship, and loss ground the novel's grand historical sweep in intimate human moments. These relationships are complicated by the pressures of family expectations and the political turmoil engulfing the nation. Saleem's romantic encounters, in particular, reveal his vulnerabilities and desires, adding layers to his character beyond his role as a symbolic figure. The narrative also delves into the ways history distorts and rewrites itself. Saleem frequently questions the reliability of memory, acknowledging that his account is subjective and shaped by emotion and hindsight. This self-reflexivity adds depth to the novel, reminding readers that history is never a simple, objective truth, but a contested space shaped by those who tell the stories. Saleem's role as narrator is both powerful and precarious. He wields the authority of storyteller, but also reveals the limits of his knowledge. Religious identity and communal tensions continue to be a significant undercurrent. The novel does not shy away from portraying the violence and mistrust between Hindus and Muslims that mar the post-independence period. Saleem's family is caught in this web of suspicion and conflict, and his personal narrative reflects the broader societal fractures. Yet, Rushdie also emphasizes the ways in which identities are fluid and contested, resisting simplistic categorization. The arrival of key historical figures and events deepens the novel's engagement with India's political history. The Emergency, a period of political repression declared by Indira Gandhi in the 1970s, looms as a dark chapter that threatens to undo the fragile progress of the nation. Saleem's life becomes increasingly entwined with these political developments, and the novel explores how authoritarianism can crush individual freedoms and dreams. Throughout this section, the novel's use of magical realism remains striking. The fantastical elements, telepathy, strange physical transformations, and improbable coincidences serve not only as imaginative flourishes, but as powerful metaphors. They illustrate the surreal nature of history and the ways in which reality can be stranger than fiction. Saleem's body, with its peculiar sensitivities and ailments, stands as a symbol of the nation's own strange and often painful transformation. Saleem's voice grows more reflective and melancholic as he recounts these years. He recognizes that the magic and promise of independence are shadowed by betrayal and loss. The Midnight's children, once symbols of hope and renewal, are beginning to face the harsh realities of political fragmentation, violence, and repression. Saleem's story becomes a meditation on the cost of freedom and the elusive nature of identity in a world marked by division and change. By the end of this phase in the narrative, Saleem's journey has become a powerful exploration of the ties that bind personal memory to national history. His story is one of survival and resilience, but also of pain and disillusionment. The intimate details of his life, the family dramas, the illnesses, the friendships, are inseparable from the grand sweep of India's history, reflecting the novel's central theme that individual and collective destinies are inextricably linked. As Saleem's story advances, the intersection of his personal fate and the turbulent history of India deepens in complexity and intensity. The political upheavals, the communal riots, and the shifting allegiances of the era are no longer mere background settings. They surge into the very core of his family's existence and his own identity. The narrative grows richer in its exploration of how the private and the political are entwined, how the scars of history imprint themselves on individual lives. Saleem's family, once secure in their social and economic standing, faces the fragility that mirrors the nation's instability. The empire of Ahmed Sinai, built on business ventures and ambitions, begins to crumble under the weight of both external pressures and internal contradictions. The lavish lifestyle gives way to uncertainty and strife, reflecting the broader erosion of old certainties in post-colonial India. The Sinai household itself becomes a microcosm of a society in transition, caught between the vestiges of colonial privilege and the rise of a new, often violent, order. This period reveals the increasing tensions within Saleem himself. The boy who once eagerly embraced his extraordinary abilities now confronts their limits and burdens. The telepathic connection with the other Midnight's children, initially a source of wonder and unity, becomes fraught with discord and alienation. The children, representing the fragmented sub-communities of the nation, struggle to maintain solidarity as political, religious, and linguistic differences come to the fore. Saleem's attempts at leadership feel increasingly fragile, mirroring the tenuous hold that India itself has on its own unity. One of the novel's most poignant themes during this stage is the idea of loss of innocence, of unity, and of hope. Saleem's own body, a recurring symbol throughout the story, becomes a battleground where these losses manifest. His nosebleeds intensify, his health deteriorates, and his physical decline parallels the unraveling of the national dream. Rushdie uses these physical afflictions not merely for dramatic effect, but to symbolize the deep wounds inflicted by history's violence and betrayal. The narrative also expands to explore the lives of other Midnight's children, who each carry their own unique gifts and tragedies. These parallel stories add layers to the novel's exploration of India's diversity and discord. Some children embody hope and promise, while others reflect the darkness and violence that plague the nation. Their collective fate, often marked by suffering and disillusionment, speaks to the impossibility of reconciling the myriad identities that compose the subcontinent. Saleem's family relationships become more strained and complex. His parents, caught in their own struggles and secrets, are unable to provide the stability and guidance he needs. The gulf between generations widens as the older Sinais cling to fading traditions, while the younger generation confronts harsh realities. The emotional distance and misunderstandings underscore the broader theme of fragmentation within families, communities, and the nation. Romantic entanglements further complicate Saleem's life. His relationships are intense, yet fraught with difficulties, echoing the unpredictable and often painful nature of the world around him. Love, desire, and betrayal intertwine, exposing his vulnerabilities and deepening the emotional resonance of his story. These personal connections also illuminate the cultural and political divides of the era, as relationships cross boundaries of class, religion, and ideology. The novel's rich narrative voice continues to challenge readers with its intricate layering of fact and fiction, memory and imagination. Saleem's storytelling is self-aware, frequently acknowledging the unreliability of memory and the subjectivity of history. This meta-narrative approach invites readers to question what they accept as truth, reminding them that history is often a contested space shaped by power, perspective, and storytelling. A significant development during this time is Saleem's growing awareness of the ways in which power operates, not just in governments, but in families, communities, and individuals. The abuses of authority he witnesses and experiences highlight the dangers of unchecked power and the fragile nature of justice. The political repression, censorship, and violence of the emergency era loom large, foreshadowing darker times ahead. Saleem's story becomes a powerful indictment of authoritarianism and its corrosive effects on society and the human spirit. The portrayal of religious and communal tensions grows more intense, reflecting the realities of partition and its aftermath. The novel does not shy away from depicting the brutal violence and deep-seated mistrust between communities. These conflicts tear through the fabric of Saleem's world, fracturing relationships and identities. Yet, amidst this turmoil, Rushdie emphasizes moments of humanity, resilience, and hope, suggesting that even in the darkest times, connection and understanding remain possible. As the narrative moves forward, the theme of identity, both personal and national, becomes ever more urgent. Saleem grapples with the contradictions within himself, his Hindu and Muslim heritage, his roles as both insider and outsider, his divided loyalties. These internal conflicts mirror the external struggles of India and its neighbors, where histories, religions, and cultures collide and overlap in complex ways. Saleem's quest to understand and reconcile these aspects of himself reflects the larger search for coherence and meaning in a fractured world. The use of magical realism remains central to the novel's power. The fantastical elements continue to blur the boundaries between reality and myth, history and story. Saleem's body, with its mystical connections and strange afflictions, embodies this fusion, standing as a symbol of a nation caught between myth and modernity. These magical moments invite readers to see history not just as a linear sequence of events, but as a layered, multifaceted narrative shaped by imagination and belief. Throughout this stage of the story, Rushdie's prose remains vibrant and poetic, filled with rich imagery and evocative detail. The sensory descriptions of smells, tastes, sounds, and sights immerse readers in the world of the Sinai family and the India they inhabit. The cities pulse with life and contradiction, from the bustling streets of Bombay to the tense neighborhoods torn by communal violence. These vivid settings ground the novel's sweeping themes in tangible reality. Saleem's reflections on his own storytelling grow deeper and more philosophical. He contemplates the nature of fate and free will, the ways in which individuals shape history even as they are shaped by it. His narrative voice is both intimate and universal, weaving together personal memory and collective experience. This dual perspective allows the novel to resonate on multiple levels, inviting readers to see their own histories within Saleem's story. By the end of this phase, Saleem's journey has become a poignant meditation on the costs of independence and the complexities of freedom. The dreams that inspired the Midnight's children have been tempered by harsh realities, violence, betrayal, and loss. Yet, the narrative also holds space for hope and resilience, suggesting that even fractured identities and divided nations can find ways to survive and perhaps heal. The story now plunges deeper into the unfolding chaos of the emergency, a dark chapter in India's post-independence history. And with it, Saleem Sinai's personal turmoil intensifies. The emergency, declared by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1975, suspends civil liberties and imposes authoritarian control over the country, casting a long shadow over the lives of millions and engulfing Saleem's world in fear and repression. This moment marks a turning point where the political upheaval overtly invades the intimate spaces of family and identity, blurring the boundaries between public and private life. Saleem, who once believed himself to be a unique figure, marked by the extraordinary powers granted to him at birth, finds his sense of self increasingly destabilized. The telepathic network of the Midnight's children, which once symbolized unity and hope, fractures irreparably under the weight of political oppression and suspicion. These children, each representing a facet of India's diverse and fragmented identity, struggle not only with their own powers, but also with the harsh realities of survival in a nation gripped by fear and control. Saleem's connection to them weakens, and with it, his belief in the possibility of collective healing and transformation begins to falter. Meanwhile, Saleem's personal life is in disarray. The Sinai family, once a bastion of relative comfort and privilege, is caught in the crossfire of shifting political alliances and social upheaval. Saleem's parents, with their own secrets and regrets, seem increasingly distant, unable to shield him from the storm that rages both outside and within their home. The family estate itself mirrors this decline, decaying physically as well as metaphorically, emblematic of the broader disintegration of the ideals that once inspired the fight for independence. Saleem's deteriorating health continues to be a powerful metaphor for the state of the nation. His chronic nosebleeds become more frequent and severe, signaling not only his physical fragility, but also the symbolic bleeding of the country itself. The body, a recurring motif throughout the novel, acts as a repository of historical trauma and national suffering. Saleem's failing body embodies the costs exacted by history's violence and the impossibility of containing such pain within a single individual. The novel's rich tapestry of characters expands further during this period. Saleem's relationships grow more complicated, reflecting the social and political divides that fragment the subcontinent. Romantic entanglements become tinged with both passion and betrayal, highlighting the tensions between love and ideology. These relationships are not merely personal dramas, but microcosms of the broader conflicts shaping India's social fabric. The interweaving of personal and political narratives underscores Rushdie's central theme that history is always lived at the level of the individual, with all its attendant joys and sorrows. As Saleem moves through this turbulent period, his narrative voice grows more reflective and self-aware. He confronts the unreliability of memory and the fluidity of identity, acknowledging that his story, like India's history, is shaped by shifting perspectives, omissions, and inventions. This meta-narrative dimension invites readers to question the nature of truth and the ways in which stories are constructed and contested. Saleem's storytelling becomes an act of resistance, a way of reclaiming agency in a world determined to erase or rewrite inconvenient histories. The political context of the emergency is portrayed with unflinching honesty, revealing the mechanisms of power and control. The arbitrary arrests, forced sterilizations, and suppression of dissent paint a grim picture of authoritarianism's corrosive effects. Saleem's family, despite their earlier privileges, is not immune to this repression. The novel exposes how power operates at every level, from the corridors of government to the dynamics within households, revealing the complex interplay of fear, complicity, and resistance. Religious and communal tensions continue to simmer and explode throughout the narrative. The scars of partition, which still haunt the nation decades later, manifest in renewed outbreaks of violence and mistrust. Saleem's mixed heritage, his Muslim and Hindu backgrounds, places him at the intersection of these conflicts, making his identity a site of both possibility and pain. His personal struggles embody the broader challenges facing India as it grapples with pluralism and the persistent threats of division. The use of magical realism intensifies during this phase, blending fantastical elements with brutal political realities. Saleem's supernatural powers are both a blessing and a curse, symbolizing the paradoxes of India itself, a land of immense potential and profound contradictions. These magical elements allow Rushdie to explore history not only as a series of events, but as a living, breathing narrative shaped by myth, memory, and imagination. The boundaries between past and present blur, underscoring the cyclical nature of history and the enduring impact of unresolved traumas. Amidst the political chaos and personal upheaval, moments of tenderness and resilience shine through. Saleem's reflections on love, loss, and family provide emotional depth and nuance, reminding readers of the enduring human spirit. These moments balance the novel's darker themes, suggesting that even in the face of repression and violence, hope and connection remain possible. Saleem's evolving understanding of his own identity is one of the most compelling threads in this part of the story. He wrestles with feelings of alienation and fragmentation, struggling to reconcile the multiple facets of his heritage and history. His journey is a metaphor for the nation's quest for unity and coherence in the face of diversity and conflict. The complexity of his identity challenges simplistic notions of belonging and loyalty, offering a more nuanced vision of what it means to be Indian. The Sinai family's fortunes continue to wane, reflecting the broader social and economic upheavals transforming India. The collapse of their business empire and the erosion of their social standing echo the decline of old power structures and the uncertain rise of new ones. This shifting landscape forces Saleem and his family to confront harsh realities and make difficult choices, illustrating the costs of historical change on personal lives. Throughout this segment, Rushdie's prose remains vivid and evocative, drawing readers into the sensory world of the Sinai household and the cities they inhabit. The rich descriptions of sights, sounds, and smells evoke a world teeming with life and contradiction. The chaotic energy of the streets, the tense atmosphere of political rallies, and the intimate moments within the family home combine to create a textured, immersive experience. Saleem's narrative voice, marked by humor, irony, and poignancy, guides readers through this complex terrain. His storytelling is both intimate and expansive, weaving together personal memories and national history with fluidity and grace. The shifting perspectives and nonlinear structure challenge readers to engage actively with the text, piecing together the multifaceted story of India and the Midnight's children. As this phase of the story draws to a close, the weight of history and memory presses heavily on Saleem. His body, his family, and his nation all bear the marks of past and present traumas. Yet, despite the pain and loss, the narrative holds a fragile sense of possibility and openness to new beginnings, and the hope that stories, even those marked by suffering, can lead to understanding and reconciliation. As the narrative continues, Saleem Sinai's journey deepens into the heart of India's political turmoil and personal tragedy, weaving together the intimate with the epic. The emergency, which has cast a suffocating pall over the country, reaches its darkest moments, and Saleem's world reflects this descent with increasing intensity. The state's crackdown on dissent is relentless and invasive, and the grip of authoritarianism tightens like a vise around every facet of life, making survival a precarious endeavor. Saleem's identity, already fragile and fractured, becomes even more tenuous as he confronts not only external threats, but also the inner turmoil of his fading powers and eroding family ties. In this phase of the story, Saleem's health worsens dramatically. The relentless nosebleeds, a physical manifestation of his connection to India's suffering, grow more violent and uncontrollable. These episodes become almost symbolic death throes, underscoring the fragility of both his body and the nation's fragile democracy. Saleem's failing condition is mirrored by the disintegration of the Midnight's Children Network, the once vibrant and hopeful collective that had promised unity and magical possibilities now lies in shambles. Their powers, much like India's postcolonial promises, seem to have withered under the pressure of reality's harsh demands. As Saleem's family life unravels, the Sinai household is consumed by fear, suspicion, and betrayal. The political landscape invades the home with ruthless force. Neighbors and friends turn into informants, and trust becomes a rare commodity. The sense of paranoia pervades every interaction, reflecting the broader atmosphere of surveillance and repression that characterizes the emergency. Saleem's parents, who had once appeared as figures of stability, reveal themselves to be flawed and fallible, unable to protect their son from the devastating consequences of their own choices and the political chaos swirling around them. Saleem's personal relationships further complicate his sense of self and belonging. His romantic entanglements are fraught with political and emotional conflicts, mirroring the fractures within the nation. The interplay of love and ideology plays out vividly as Saleem navigates these connections, each revealing new dimensions of his character and the complexities of the world he inhabits. These relationships serve not only as personal dramas, but also as metaphors for the challenges of unity and division that define India's post-independence trajectory. The narrative also brings into sharper focus the communal tensions that continue to haunt the country. Saleem's mixed Hindu-Muslim heritage places him at the crossroads of these conflicts, embodying the painful contradictions and potential reconciliations within India's diverse social fabric. The scars of partition remain raw, and the novel's exploration of religious identity is both deeply personal and profoundly political. Saleem's struggles with his own identity echo the nation's ongoing struggle to forge a coherent and inclusive identity amidst persistent sectarian violence and mistrust. Magical realism remains a vital element of the story, with Saleem's supernatural abilities serving as both a metaphor for India's potential and a burden that isolates him. His powers, once a source of pride and connection, become sources of pain and alienation as they deteriorate. The tension between the magical and the mundane highlights the novel's central themes of history, memory, and identity. Rushdie's blending of the fantastical with the real invites readers to see history as a narrative shaped by myth and imagination as much as by facts and events. Amid the chaos, moments of quiet resilience and tenderness emerge. Saleem's reflections on his family, love, and loss offer emotional depth, grounding the sprawling historical narrative in human experience. These intimate moments provide a counterbalance to the harsh realities of political repression, reminding readers of the enduring power of hope and connection, even in the darkest times. Saleem's storytelling grows more reflective and self-aware, with frequent meditations on the nature of memory and the unreliability of narrative. He acknowledges the ways in which his own story is shaped by the passage of time, by selective remembrance and forgetting. This meta-narrative dimension invites readers to consider the act of storytelling itself as a form of resistance and survival, a means of asserting agency in a world intent on silencing dissenting voices. The emergency's political backdrop is depicted with stark realism, revealing the mechanisms of power and the brutal consequences of authoritarian rule. The novel exposes how political repression infiltrates everyday life, disrupting families, communities, and individuals. Saleem's family, despite their earlier privileges, is not spared the harsh realities of state violence and coercion. The novel's portrayal of this period serves as a powerful critique of the dangers of unchecked power and the fragility of democratic institutions. As the story unfolds, Saleem's evolving sense of identity becomes a central focus. He grapples with feelings of fragmentation and alienation, struggling to reconcile the multiple and sometimes conflicting aspects of his heritage and history. His personal journey reflects the broader national quest for unity and coherence amidst diversity and division. This exploration of identity is complex and nuanced, challenging simplistic narratives of belonging and loyalty. The decline of the Sinai family's fortunes parallels the broader social and economic transformations sweeping India. The collapse of their business empire and the erosion of their social status symbolize the shifting power dynamics in a country undergoing rapid change. These changes force Saleem and his family to confront painful realities and make difficult choices, illustrating the human costs of historical upheaval. Throughout this section, Rushdie's prose remains richly detailed and evocative, immersing readers in the sensory world of the Sinai household and the cities they inhabit. The vibrant descriptions of sights, sounds, and smells create a vivid backdrop against which the story unfolds. The bustling streets, tense political rallies, and intimate family moments combine to form a rich and textured narrative landscape. Saleem's voice continues to be marked by a blend of humor, irony, and poignancy, guiding readers through the complexities of history and memory with a unique blend of intimacy and expansiveness. The narrative's nonlinear structure and shifting perspectives challenge readers to engage deeply with the text, piecing together the multifaceted story of India and its Midnight's children. As this segment draws to a close, the weight of history and memory presses heavily upon Saleem. His body, his family, and his nation bear the scars of past and present traumas, yet amidst the pain and loss, a fragile sense of possibility remains. The narrative holds open the hope that through storytelling and remembrance, understanding and reconciliation may yet be achieved. The story now shifts into a period of increasing chaos and fragmentation, both within Saleem Sinai's personal world and across the vast and fracturing landscape of India. The emergency's oppressive atmosphere lingers like a dark cloud, casting shadows over the lives of countless individuals caught in its sweep. Saleem's own condition continues to deteriorate. His body betrays him more frequently. His once potent connection to the magical and the national slipping away like sand through his fingers. These physical declines are mirrored by a growing sense of disillusionment and isolation, as Saleem wrestles with the loss of the powers that once defined him and tied him so intimately to the fate of the nation. Despite the personal decline, Saleem's narrative expands in scope, capturing the mounting political violence and social unrest that marks this era. The emergency's suspension of civil liberties has sown deep divisions, and the country is gripped by fear, mistrust, and relentless surveillance. The government's attempts to control and silence dissenters penetrate even the most private spaces, dismantling the boundaries between public and personal, and turning neighbors against one another. Saleem's family becomes emblematic of this broader breakdown, fractured by betrayals and the corrosive effects of authoritarianism. The novel's focus on the fragmentation of identity deepens, exploring how Saleem's sense of self is shattered and reshaped by these turbulent events. His once grand narrative, intertwined with the birth of the nation and the magical Midnight's children, becomes increasingly fragmented and uncertain. Saleem's powers fade, and with them, his symbolic role as a unifying figure weakens. This loss reflects not only his personal decline, but also the disintegration of the dreams and ideals that had once seemed to hold India together. The theme of memory takes on new weight here, with Saleem's storytelling becoming more unreliable and subjective. He openly acknowledges his imperfect recollection. The gaps and contradictions in his narrative mirroring the elusive nature of history itself. The novel highlights the constructedness of personal and collective memory, emphasizing that the stories we tell about ourselves and our nations are often incomplete, contested, and shaped by perspective. Saleem's fragmented account invites readers to question the nature of truth and the possibility of truly capturing the past. In this section, Saleem's relationships with other characters grow more complex and fraught. His interactions with the other Midnight's children reveal tensions and rivalries that challenge the ideal of unity the group once symbolized. The magical children, once envisioned as a hopeful embodiment of India's pluralism and potential, now struggle with jealousy, bitterness, and competing visions for the future. These conflicts reflect the broader struggles within India's diverse population, between religions, languages, classes, and regions that threaten to pull the nation apart. The narrative also delves deeper into the psychological effects of trauma and displacement. Saleem's fragmented identity is portrayed as both a cause and consequence of the collective wounds inflicted by partition, communal violence, and political repression. His mixed heritage and complex family history underscore the difficulties of belonging in a society riven by historical grievances and ongoing conflict. Through Saleem's introspections, the novel explores the painful processes of loss, mourning, and survival that shape both individual and national identities. Despite the bleakness, Rushdie's prose retains moments of lyrical beauty and dark humor, softening the harsh realities with wit and imaginative flair. The magical realist elements remain integral, with surreal episodes and symbolic imagery illuminating the narrative. Saleem's deteriorating powers are depicted not merely as personal failings, but as metaphors for the decline of idealism and the erosion of collective hope. The interplay between the magical and the mundane continues to enrich the text, underscoring the complex relationship between myth and history. Amidst the political turmoil, the story shifts attention to the private sphere, where family dramas unfold with heightened intensity. Saleem's parents, once powerful and influential figures, are caught in their own struggles with loss, betrayal, and changing fortunes. Their personal conflicts reflect the dislocations of a society in flux, highlighting how the political violence of the era seeps into everyday life. The fracturing of Saleem's family serves as a microcosm for the broader societal breakdown, illustrating the interconnectedness of the personal and the political. The emergencies policies, forced sterilizations, censorship, arrests form a grim backdrop, their impacts felt acutely by the characters. The novel's portrayal of this dark chapter is unflinching, exposing the abuses of power and the erosion of democratic values. Saleem's own experiences, his family's harassment, the loss of friends and allies, capture the human cost of authoritarianism. These events challenge the idealistic narratives of independence and progress that once inspired hope, revealing instead a nation grappling with its own contradictions and failures. Within this context, Saleem's role as narrator becomes even more vital. His voice, marked by vulnerability and honesty, provides a conduit for the reader to experience the complexities of history from a deeply personal perspective. Saleem does not present himself as a flawless hero, but rather as a flawed, fallible individual struggling to make sense of a chaotic world. This humanization makes the epic sweep of the novel more accessible, grounding the grand historical themes in intimate emotional realities. The narrative's temporal shifts and nonlinear structure continue to challenge traditional storytelling, emphasizing the fragmented nature of memory and history. The interweaving of past and present, myth and fact, dream and reality creates a layered texture that mirrors the complexity of postcolonial India. This storytelling approach invites readers to engage actively with the text, piecing together the story like a mosaic, where each fragment adds depth and nuance to the whole. The social commentary embedded within the novel grows sharper. Rushdie critiques not only the political regime of the emergency, but also the lingering colonial legacies and social inequalities that complicate India's path forward. The novel explores themes of class, religion, and ethnicity with sensitivity and insight, portraying the challenges of forging unity in a diverse and divided society. Saleem's own ambiguous identity embodies these tensions, highlighting the difficulties of belonging and the contested nature of nationhood. In the midst of all this, Saleem's sense of hope, while diminished, has not entirely vanished. Moments of tenderness and connection provide glimpses of possibility, suggesting that even in times of darkness, human resilience and the power of storytelling endure. These moments underscore the novel's overarching theme that identity, history, and memory are dynamic, constantly evolving in response to change and adversity. As the narrative moves forward, Saleem's reflections become increasingly poignant, imbued with a sense of urgency and a desire for understanding. His story is not only a personal reckoning, but also a testament to the enduring struggles and hopes of post-colonial India. The intertwined destinies of Saleem and his nation continue to unfold, their fates linked inextricably as the novel progresses toward its climactic revelations. As the story moves deeper into the turbulent years following the emergency, the weight of loss and change presses heavily on Saleem Sinai. The fragile threads connecting him to his extraordinary abilities begin to fray almost completely, mirroring the fracturing of India itself under the strain of political upheaval and communal conflict. Saleem's body, once a vessel of magical potential and national symbolism, now becomes increasingly unreliable. His nose, which had long been a defining feature, starts to collapse, marking a physical decline that is impossible to ignore. This slow disintegration is not merely physical but emblematic of the erosion of the idealism and unity that had once seemed so promising at the moment of independence. The novel delves deeply into themes of decay and disillusionment, reflecting the disintegration of the political and social fabric of the nation. The emergency's harsh crackdown left scars on India's democratic institutions, and the story captures the pervasive sense of fear and mistrust that seeped into everyday life. Saleem's experiences are a microcosm of this larger reality. His family's fortunes decline, old alliances dissolve, and new enmities emerge. The once vibrant community of Midnight's children, born at the exact moment of independence and gifted with special powers, begins to unravel, their magical bonds weakened by jealousy, betrayal, and the corrosive effects of violence. Throughout this segment, Saleem wrestles with his fading identity. The powers that had once linked him mystically to the destiny of the nation now seem distant, intangible. He grapples with the painful realization that the unity he once represented, a symbol of India's diverse yet interconnected future, is slipping away. This loss is profoundly personal and symbolic, illustrating the novel's meditation on the fragility of identity and the complexities of postcolonial existence. The narrative voice takes on a tone of somber reflection, mingled with moments of dark humor and sharp critique. Saleem's storytelling becomes increasingly self-aware, acknowledging the gaps in memory and the unreliability of historical narratives. His fragmented recollections emphasize how history itself is often pieced together from partial truths and subjective perspectives. This exploration invites readers to question the possibility of ever fully grasping the past, whether personal or political, and highlights the ongoing struggle to reconcile conflicting narratives in a society shaped by colonial legacies and traumatic partition. As the emergency comes to an end, the country faces the daunting task of rebuilding and healing, but the scars remain deep. Saleem's family continues to reflect these broader social fissures. Relationships strained by suspicion and betrayal struggle to survive in an atmosphere thick with unresolved grievances. Saleem's mother's increasing despair and withdrawal echo the loss of innocence and the shattering of dreams that so many experienced during this dark period. The story also revisits the theme of exile and displacement. Saleem, increasingly alienated from his own body and community, embodies the dislocation experienced by many Indians in the post-independence era. His mixed heritage, his lineage tied to multiple cultures and regions, makes him an emblem of the hybrid, fractured identity that defines much of India's post-colonial reality. His internal conflict mirrors the external turmoil, and Rushdie uses this interplay to probe deeply into questions of belonging, nationhood, and the personal cost of political upheaval. Amidst the gloom, moments of hope and resilience punctuate the narrative. Saleem's relationships, though often fraught, reveal glimmers of human connection and compassion. These interactions offer a counterpoint to the widespread despair and violence, suggesting that even in the darkest times, bonds of family and friendship can endure. The novel celebrates these small victories of love and understanding, underscoring the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. The magical realism that characterizes much of the novel continues to enrich the storytelling. Though Saleem's powers diminish, the narrative remains infused with surreal, symbolic imagery that conveys the complexities of memory and history. Dreams, visions, and mystical episodes weave through the prose, blurring the boundaries between reality and fantasy. This layering of the magical onto the mundane serves to deepen the exploration of identity and the national psyche, suggesting that the truths of history are often found in the mythic and the metaphorical as much as in documented facts. The political backdrop remains central to the unfolding drama. The emergency's end does not bring immediate peace. Instead, it gives way to new challenges, including the continuing communal tensions that eventually lead to the tragic events surrounding the Bangladesh Liberation War. Saleem's narrative touches on these wider historical forces, portraying how the echoes of partition continue to reverberate decades later. The story captures the enduring complexities of Indian and South Asian politics, the fragile alliances, the communal distrust, and the persistent struggle for power and identity. Within this context, Saleem's personal journey is one of reconciliation and reckoning. He seeks to piece together the fragments of his past, attempting to understand not only his own fractured identity, but also the larger story of his nation. This quest for coherence amid chaos is a central motif, underscoring the novel's meditation on the nature of history and storytelling itself. Saleem's narrative acknowledges the impossibility of a single, unified truth, yet it also affirms the importance of telling stories as acts of survival and meaning-making. As the narrative progresses, Saleem's voice grows more intimate and urgent. He grapples with the legacy of trauma, both inherited and lived, and the need to bear witness to the past, however painful. His role as a storyteller takes on greater significance, serving as a bridge between generations and between the personal and the political. Through his reflections, the novel emphasizes the power of narrative to heal wounds, to preserve memory, and to forge identity in the face of fragmentation. The theme of family continues to dominate the emotional landscape. Saleem's complicated relationships with his parents, siblings, and extended family members reveal the deep interconnections between personal histories and national history. The family's struggles with loss, betrayal, and reconciliation mirror the broader societal attempts to come to terms with a difficult past and an uncertain future. The portrayal of family dynamics is nuanced and poignant, capturing the contradictions of love and resentment, hope and despair that define human relationships. Throughout this section, Rushdie's prose remains vivid and evocative, blending humor with tragedy, myth with realism. The richly detailed descriptions bring to life the bustling cities, rural landscapes, and political arenas that form the backdrop of the story. The sensory richness of the narrative, its smells, sounds, colors, and textures, immerses readers fully in the world of the novel, making the historical and emotional stakes all the more immediate and compelling. As Saleem's story unfolds against the backdrop of India's ongoing transformation, the novel underscores the themes of loss and renewal, fragmentation and unity. The magical realism that had once offered a sense of wonder now takes on a more melancholic tone, reflecting the complexities of a nation grappling with its past and searching for its future. The narrative invites readers to consider the ways in which history, memory, and identity are intertwined, shaped by forces both internal and external. By the end of this segment, the reader senses that Saleem's journey is approaching a crucial turning point. The threads of his personal history and the nation's fate are drawing tighter, and the unresolved tensions and mysteries that have permeated the narrative hint at the revelations yet to come. Despite the losses and disappointments, there remains a lingering sense of possibility, an acknowledgement that even in the midst of fragmentation, the act of storytelling itself holds the power to create meaning and connection. The story now turns inward as Saleem Sinai moves toward the final chapters of his life and his narrative, wrestling profoundly with the full weight of memory, history, and identity. The disintegration of his physical form parallels the unraveling of his understanding of himself and his place in the world. His body, which once held the promise of magic and national significance, continues to deteriorate, with his collapsing nose symbolizing the erasure of his singular identity. It is as though the very essence that tied him to the moment of India's birth and all the powers that came with it is slipping away, leaving only a fragile human core. Saleem's life now is a shadow of its former grandeur, but his storytelling grows even more urgent and raw. He reflects on the consequences of the choices made not only by himself, but also by the nation, and the tangled legacy of partition, independence, and the emergency. Through his eyes, readers witness how the postcolonial dream has been complicated by violence, betrayal, and loss, yet also by resilience and the stubborn persistence of hope. In this phase, Saleem's narrative becomes a powerful meditation on the nature of history itself. He acknowledges the gaps, the contradictions, and the subjective nature of memory. History is not a fixed record, but a fluid, contested space shaped by those who tell it. Saleem's voice carries the burden of this realization, how his personal memories intersect with collective history, how the stories he tells are as much about myth and identity as about facts. This uncertainty is woven throughout the novel, inviting readers to question the reliability of any single narrative and to appreciate the multiplicity of perspectives that shape a nation's story. The novel's themes of fragmentation and hybridity come to the forefront here. Saleem's mixed heritage and the myriad cultural influences that make up his identity underscore the complexities of post-colonial India. He embodies the tensions between tradition and modernity, between different religious and ethnic communities, and between the inherited colonial past and the uncertain future. Saleem's fractured self is a metaphor for the fractured nation, a place where multiple histories and identities coexist and often clash. Throughout this section, Saleem confronts the painful realities of exile and displacement. His physical removal from the family home and his psychological estrangement reflect broader diasporic experiences. The novel explores how displacement shapes identity and memory, how leaving home can lead to both loss and new forms of belonging. Saleem's reflections on exile are deeply poignant, capturing the loneliness and longing that come with being uprooted, yet also the possibility of transformation that such a rupture can bring. Saleem's family history continues to be a rich tapestry of love, conflict, and survival. The bonds that tie him to his parents, siblings, and extended family remain a source of both comfort and pain. Their stories, interwoven with the larger narrative of India's post-independence struggles, reveal the intimate impact of historical forces on individual lives. The novel's portrayal of family is neither idealized nor simplistic. It embraces complexity, showing how love and resentment coexist, how betrayal and forgiveness shape relationships over time. The novel also delves deeper into the theme of storytelling as a means of survival and resistance. Saleem's act of narrating his life, with all its flaws and contradictions, is itself an act of defiance against erasure. By telling his story, he claims a space in history and asserts his right to be heard. This meta-narrative highlights the power of literature and memory to challenge dominant historical accounts and to give voice to marginalized experiences. Amidst the political turmoil and personal tragedies, moments of beauty and humor persist. Rushdie's prose sparkles with wit and lyrical inventiveness, bringing levity even to the darkest moments. The novel's magical realism remains a vital part of its texture, blending the surreal with the real to create a rich, multi-layered world. These magical elements underscore the novel's exploration of identity and history, suggesting that the truths of the past are often best expressed through myth and metaphor. As Saleem's story approaches its conclusion, the novel grapples with the possibility of redemption and renewal. Despite the losses and betrayals, there remains a sense of hope rooted in the power of memory and the resilience of the human spirit. Saleem's journey is both an ending and a beginning, a testament to the enduring complexities of identity, history, and storytelling in a world marked by change and upheaval. The narrative also reflects on the cyclical nature of history, the repeating patterns of violence and reconciliation, division and unity. Saleem's reflections on the past suggest that while history may not repeat exactly, it echoes across generations, shaping the lives of those who come after. This theme invites readers to consider their own place within the ongoing flow of history and to recognize the importance of memory and narrative in shaping collective identity. Throughout this part, the emotional intensity builds as Saleem confronts the accumulated weight of his life and the nation's story. His vulnerabilities and strengths are laid bare, creating a deeply human portrait of a man caught between myth and reality, history and memory. This intimate exploration of character adds a powerful emotional resonance to the novel's broader political and historical themes. Saleem's relationships, especially with his family, take on a new urgency as the story moves toward its climax. The bonds that have been strained by time and conflict are tested once more, revealing both the capacity for forgiveness and the enduring wounds of the past. These family dynamics serve as a microcosm of the nation's struggles, reflecting the challenges of reconciliation and the possibility of healing. The political context remains ever present, grounding the personal story in a larger historical framework. The novel captures the shifting landscape of post-emergency India, with its continuing challenges of communal violence, political instability, and social change. Saleem's narrative offers insight into the human impact of these forces, bringing history to life through the eyes of one individual. As Saleem's tale draws closer to its final revelations, the novel maintains its intricate balance of myth and realism, humor and tragedy, history and fiction. This synthesis creates a rich and compelling narrative that invites readers to engage deeply with the complexities of identity and the legacies of history. In the closing moments of this section, Saleem's reflections take on a tone of quiet acceptance. He acknowledges the fragmented, imperfect nature of his story and the stories of his country. Yet he also affirms the enduring value of memory and narrative. The act of telling, despite its limitations, becomes a form of connection and understanding, bridging the gaps between past and present, self and other. This part of the story leaves readers poised on the edge of the final act, filled with anticipation for the resolution of Saleem's journey and the ultimate fate of the Midnight's children. The novel's exploration of memory, identity, and history culminates here in a powerful and moving meditation on what it means to live and to tell a life in a world shaped by upheaval and transformation. As Saleem Sinai nears the end of his life and the telling of his story, there is a profound sense of both closure and continuation, a paradox befitting a narrative so deeply entwined with the birth and evolution of a nation. Saleem's physical body, ravaged and failing, reflects the fragmentation of his identity, yet his mind remains fiercely alive, desperate to preserve the memory of all that he has seen, felt, and embodied. The act of narration itself becomes his lifeline, the fragile thread connecting him to a past that refuses to be forgotten and a future that still holds a glimmer of hope. In these final chapters, the themes of destiny, history, and personal agency crystallize. Saleem reflects on the intricate web of fate that has bound him from birth to the moment of India's independence and beyond. His powers, his birth aligned precisely with midnight on August 15, 1947, and his connection to the other Midnight's children have all seemed predetermined. Yet throughout the story, Saleem wrestles with the tension between fate and free will. Now, as the narrative draws to a close, he recognizes the complexity of this balance, how history and identity are shaped by both larger forces and individual choices. The Midnight's children themselves, once so full of promise and magical powers, become a symbol of both the potential and the fragility of the nation. Their dispersal, their varied fates, some tragic, some hopeful, mirror the diverse and often conflicting trajectories of the subcontinent's people. Saleem, as the unofficial chronicler of their stories, feels the burden of witnessing their demise and dispersal, but also the responsibility to keep their memories alive. Through him, the collective memory of a generation that came into being with the birth of a new country is preserved, not as a pristine, unified narrative, but as a fractured, multifaceted tapestry. Saleem's personal journey intersects with the broader political and social upheavals that continue to shape India and its neighbors. The emergency, with its authoritarian clampdown, has left deep scars, and Saleem's reflections reveal the cost of political repression on individual lives and freedoms. His family's experience, marked by betrayal, exile, and loss, parallels the nation's struggles with democracy and dictatorship, unity and division. These intertwined stories underscore the novel's exploration of how political events ripple through the intimate spaces of home and heart. As Saleem recounts the final stages of his life, there is a powerful focus on memory's fallibility and resilience. He acknowledges the ways in which time distorts and erases, how trauma can fragment recollection, yet also how stories, once told, gain a life of their own. Saleem's narrative is layered with moments of uncertainty and self-doubt, yet it is precisely these imperfections that give it its vitality and authenticity. The novel's embrace of magical realism serves as a reminder that truth often lies beyond the literal, in the symbolic, the mythical, and the deeply personal. The motif of the nose, so central to Saleem's identity throughout the novel reaches its culmination in these final moments. The slow decay of his once prominent nose symbolizes the erosion of his unique place in history, the fading of the mythic figure into a mere man. Yet this loss also carries a certain liberation, as Saleem comes to terms with the limits of his powers and the inevitability of human frailty. His physical decline parallels a spiritual journey toward acceptance and reconciliation with the past. Family remains at the emotional core of the narrative's conclusion. The complex relationships that have woven through the novel, marked by love, rivalry, betrayal, and forgiveness, are revisited with tenderness and nuance. Saleem's interactions with his mother and father, with his siblings, and with his lost love Parvati resonate with the bittersweet recognition of what has been gained and what has been irretrievably lost. These intimate moments ground the sprawling historical epic in the deeply human experience of connection and loss. The political backdrop continues to assert itself as Saleem's story nears its end. The ongoing conflicts, the shifting borders, and the unresolved tensions between India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh provide a sobering context for his personal narrative. Saleem's experiences in exile and his reflections on nationalism and identity underscore the persistent challenges facing the post-colonial state. The novel refuses simplistic resolutions, instead presenting history as a contested, ongoing dialogue marked by contradictions and complexities. Throughout the final stretch, Rushdie's language remains vibrant and evocative, blending poetic imagery with sharp social critique. The narrative voice, wry, reflective, and deeply human, invites readers to engage not only intellectually, but emotionally with the story. The novel's rich texture, weaving together myth, history, and personal memory, culminates in a tapestry that feels both unique and universal. In these last pages, Saleem turns inward, offering profound philosophical insights on the nature of storytelling itself. He muses on the power of narratives to shape identity, to heal wounds, and to create meaning from chaos. The act of telling his story, despite its flaws and omissions, becomes a form of resistance against forgetting and erasure. Saleem's final confession is a testament to the enduring human need to be heard and understood, to claim one's place in the vast, tumultuous currents of history. The conclusion does not offer neat closure or tidy resolutions. Instead, it embraces ambiguity and the open-endedness of life. Saleem's story ends with a recognition that history and identity are never fixed, but are constantly rewritten by those who remember and those who tell. His journey reflects the ongoing process of coming to terms with the past and imagining new futures, a process that continues beyond the final page. As the narrative closes, the symbolism of midnight lingers, the moment of transition, of birth and rebirth, of endings that contain beginnings. Saleem's life, intertwined so deeply with the birth of a nation, reminds us that personal and national histories are inseparable, that the stories we tell about ourselves shape the worlds we inhabit. The novel's final tone is one of cautious hope, acknowledging the shadows and scars of history while celebrating the resilience of memory and the power of storytelling. Saleem's tale is a mirror to the complexities of India itself, a country marked by diversity, contradiction, and enduring spirit. His voice, though fading, remains a vital testament to the Midnight's children who carry within them the dreams, struggles, and contradictions of an entire generation. With this, Midnight's Children concludes not merely as a story about one man, but as a living chronicle of a nation and its people. A profound exploration of identity, history, and the magic that resides in the telling of a life. Midnight's Children stands as a monumental work in postcolonial literature, weaving a masterful blend of personal narrative, historical epic, and magical realism. Salman Rushdie's novel captures the spirit of a tumultuous era, the hopes and heartbreaks of a newly independent India, and the intricate dance between history and myth. Through Saleem Sinai's journey, readers are invited to confront the complexities of identity, individual and collective, and to embrace the contradictions that define both. The novel's exploration of memory and storytelling challenges us to question whose histories are told, and how narratives shape our understanding of the past and present. It offers no easy answers, but instead opens a space for reflection, empathy, and dialogue. The magic of the Midnight's Children, those born in the hour of India's birth, lies not only in their supernatural powers, but in their symbolic representation of a generation caught between worlds, tasked with carrying forward the legacies of colonialism, partition, and independence. Rushdie's lyrical prose, inventive structure, and richly layered characters make Midnight's Children a timeless meditation on the power of narrative to transform chaos into meaning. It remains a landmark novel, resonant with readers across the globe, reminding us that history is as much a story told as it is a sequence of events, and that through storytelling, we reclaim our humanity.